is Heather Quick with Florida Women's Law Group. Thank you for joining us. I have with us today one of our attorneys at Florida Women's Law Group, Anna Durstein. And if you're joining us today, we are going to talk about women who are the breadwinner in the marriage and really their concerns and issues during a divorce. As you know, we represent only women going through issues involving family law and divorce, estate planning, and appeals. And I mean, the world's changed, certainly in the past 18 years since I've been practicing family law. And we, have a lot of high-powered women who not only contribute, I mean, a lot of times they're carrying the whole household, aren't they?
Yep, they're the
breadwinners. And having kids on top of that.
On top of that, yes, exactly.
So, and I think that's a really valid concern. I think there's been a lot, and I've certainly spent a lot of time trying to educate women in the past, like, hey, you don't understand the finances, your husband's earning the money, what's going to happen? But I think that, in our experience, women who are earning the money are just as concerned. It's just different. It's just different concerns that they have. And so talk a little bit about the concerns those women have had, because I know we've had several, since you've been here. And, what are some of their main concerns when they're the ones really, supporting the family?
Right. The biggest concern, I would say, is that they are working outside of the family, outside of the home, and the husband is the stay-at-home dad. So they're concerned with the time sharing with their children. That's a big deal to them, because now they haven't been the stay-at-home parent who has, even though they're involved, but they haven't been that stay-at-home parent. So that is a concern to them, is, just because I worked, and worked a lot and overtime and, all these extra nights and weekends, how is it going to affect me going forward with being able to see my children as well? And another big concern is obviously a risk and exposure for them to have to pay alimony or support to their husband. That is a risk. Again, it depends, obviously, is the spouse working? Is the spouse just because he's been a completely stay-at-home dad? Does he have any degrees? There's so many different factors that go into it, but alimony would be another huge thing that clients are concerned with, especially the clients who are the breadwinners.
Absolutely. And rightfully so. The law is certainly, gender neutral, and it, under the current laws we have, it is really the ability to pay and the need.
Yeah.
But that's where we get into the need, because we've had a lot of, and there's the extremes. We've had a lot of extremely successful women, and they may make more than their husbands, but if their husbands are working, then that can be a very good thing. We're still okay. But then we are running into more and more men who have opted out of their careers to stay home. And what are some of the things that have been successful, you think, in really helping minimize our women's exposure to alimony?
Right. And obviously, again, it depends on every single case, and every case is different, but the biggest thing is that we look at their working history. We look at the past and we see what they have earned. Have they been out of the workforce for a year? And has they only been out of the workforce because they sold their business and they're looking for a new plan? Or have they been out of the workforce for 27 years and have raised, all these different things? So we look at all of that. We look at their degrees as well. Somebody could, I recently just had a case as well. The husband was an attorney. He hasn't practiced in 15 or so years, but he does have a JD. He has an education, so it's not that he's incapable of earning income. So we look at those type of cases, and we look at getting a vocational evaluator, an expert, to review their working history and provide an expert opinion to the court about their ability to earn income, which minimizes their need for any sort of support that they would get.
And we've done the same things when we've had our clients that they're very well educated.
Absolutely.
But they've stayed home, and that was an agreement by both parties. And we know, okay, when you get evaluated, it's going to come back and tell us what you're capable of earning. Not necessarily that there's a job that's going to hire you.
Of course.
So on that side, so it's kind of when we're doing it in the flip side, we know the advantages for our client if we have a vocational evaluation against, say, the stay-at-home dad or maybe underemployed.
Right, that's true too. Yeah,
where maybe they're like, well, I could work, but I've decided just to work part-time, help out more at home, and not really making a whole lot with that. So let's talk a little bit about time sharing, because that area of the law is really evolving in Florida right now. As we are here in 2018, it is far different than it was when I first started practicing, and I think it's going to continue to evolve. It's not like well, it does depend on the judge. You're in front of,
that's true too.
But it's not written in the law that it's a straight 50-50. But it's getting there, and I think it's becoming more accepted, which I think benefits our women that are the breadwinners, because we know they're working a lot, and if the husband is, that true stay-at-home dad that's actually really doing everything, that 50-50 is going to be important to them.
Right, and the court's going to realize, the court's going to recognize that if you are the breadwinner, they're not going to punish you for working. That's an important thing. That's not the court's goal to do that. Obviously, there has to be a plan for what's going to happen next, because if you have been working, you haven't been a part of some of these things, and you get involved, and that's one of the things that we start from the start when you do come see us, that we do plan ahead and we do get involved and we do go through some of these factors that the court's going to consider. But you're not being punished for having to work. That's one thing. You're not.
And I think that's big, because I think a lot of women feel that way.
Yeah.
And now I'm getting punished for being successful. And I don't know, maybe it's more as women we feel that with the kids. I don't know.
Right.
But it's not the first time I've heard that when you said that. It is something that I think women feel as though that's what's happening. I lose my kids even though I've worked so hard.
Right.
And,
for my kids.
For my kids.
And then now I'm going to lose them.
Right. But we do see that working out well in the time sharing. And then, of course, one of the things that does is the more time you have with your kids and however that works out, you may not be able to work all that extra amount of time that you had done. And also now your spouse who was saying, oh, all I do is take care of the kids in the home 100% of the time, they have at least half the time without the kids. So that allows them more time to work. And that helps.
And we do, and we look at it. Is the husband a stay-at-home dad to a 16 and a 14-year-old? Or is he a stay-at-home dad for a 2-year-old and a baby? There's a difference, and obviously there's definitely, these are two extremes. So, is he, have teenagers in the, teenagers who are driving in the home saying that I need to stay home and not take care of my children? That's a different argument. That's not going to be any kind of argument that he should be making in front of a judge, but they do all the time. But yes, the women especially, if they are the breadwinners, they are working those extra nights because they are the only person essentially providing for the family. If they are the only person that's employed in the home, so they are the only people providing. They're working the overtime. They're working, extra sales. If they are sales, they're traveling more to make those extra sales, to make that extra commission, to be able to support that entire household. So they have been doing that, and they're not going to be able to do that as much once they do have the time sharing with the children. Again, it's not to punish either way. You're not going to stop growing in your career because you're getting a divorce either. That's not anybody's intent, but we work around something like that. We plan for that. We plan to make sure that your work trips are during the weeks that you don't have the children, or the weekends you don't have the children. You pick up some overtime if you need to, different times beforehand, but you can't do that always. You're not going to be able to continue doing that lifestyle because you're going to have your children too. And
and it's just going to be different. And I think that one of the things we see with, and also just because we assume it because we deal with it all the time, but just because you are the breadwinner, alimony is not necessarily a given, because of course we have to deal with the length of the marriage. So, that's just one caveat, the length. There's so many things that go into it, which can be difficult because everybody, I think for every 10 clients, at least one wants the divorce that their best friend had.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, it probably isn't the same circumstances. And, it's always different because it's so very specific based on what's going on in your marriage and your history.
Right.
And we do. And, even though we will have some cases, I know, where women are coming to us, they're worried they've been the breadwinner. Maybe the kids are out of school.
Yeah.
So, we have to look at different things. Let's talk about it from the reverse. What do we see men do when they know they're going through a divorce and they make a lot of money? What mysteriously happens?
Their income somehow starts disappearing. They get demoted. They lose their bonuses.
Don't come in anymore.
There's no more overtime that'll ever be provided by the company. Or if they own their own business, there has been no sales in the last 5 months all of a sudden. It happens every time. It's something that, and again, it's one of those things that we've seen it happen so many times, and they do it every time.
It does. And so the judges do know. And one of the things is, just talk to us, talk to an attorney.
Yes.
Because again, strategy and plan it out. It may seem like, oh, this is a great idea.
Yeah.
I'm going to go do XYZ. Just wait, because one of the things that really is important is one, your credibility in front of a judge. If we're going to end up in that situation. And in some of the cases where I think we've been extremely successful, a lot of times is in part because the husband just lied and tried to manipulate the income and appear as if they can't make the money that they've really historically made. They lose a lot of credibility, and therefore, if they don't believe them, they're going to believe what we're proposing is, he's able to make. So you got to be really careful with that. Really do. And you definitely need to, talk to someone, an attorney, so that you understand, hey, how are my specific facts going to apply to this situation? Because bonuses are different. And that's the beautiful thing about when we're able to strategize and plan, because we can get a little bit more creative in the event we're able to settle. Creativity is kind of out the door for
Judges,
trial.
and trials. Yeah, there's not too much they can do.
They have to follow the law, and then the strategy is just, as far as how do we maximize everything for you, minimize your risk. But, you can get really creative with a lot of high earners have a lot of different kinds of compensation, from stock options to bonuses to sales incentives, just all kind of things depending on what industry you're in. And we can tailor that so that maybe it's more beneficial.
Absolutely. And absolutely. Again, like I said, everybody's, just the work structure, the pay structure just depends on everybody else. So it does depend. And, one of the things is definitely the candor to the court and how you're going to appear. It is important. I mean, it's not about, you can't go to court saying that, oh, I'm going to have my children now 50% of the time, so I just can't work during those weeks at all whatsoever. It doesn't work that way. I mean, the court notices, the court sees. It's very important to be able to talk to somebody and get an idea of what you can do and what you should start doing, as far as anything like that, or as far as any income concerns that you might have. It's very important to start that from the start too and plan it. So again, it's not happening in the middle of the case. You're all of a sudden, oh, sorry, I don't have a job now because the husband decided to ask for a lot of money from you. Or you can't do that. You can't voluntarily start changing things. The court's going to notice.
They are, and usually it's not worth it. You're going to pay in the end. So it's better to, know, hey, what you're looking at, how we can, maybe, hey, some of this stuff may be premarital, hard to say, even with long-term marriages. Right. Sometimes there's premarital. I don't think enough women who are high earners have prenups, but they may, and there's just a lot of things we can look at. And at the end of the day, the best thing we can do in those cases is negotiate a good settlement for you. That's been our best thing, and I think that's really, for all clients, that's always the best idea if you can, but you tend to hold a little bit more of the cards when you've got the financials. And the issue, though, I think, and I feel this way, wherever the case is, the momentum will shift every now and then as to who feels they have an advantage. And so sometimes it's just waiting for that tipping point, like we talked about, different evidence or different numbers, kind of, or where everybody is. Not all cases are ready to settle right away. Sometimes you just kind of got to wait for the right time and and approach it in the right way. There really is an art to it to get you where you want to be. It's
absolutely. Like those vocational evaluations we mentioned earlier, sometimes, even you can go and you can try to argue at a mediation or some sort of settlement negotiation with the other attorneys or anything. You can argue that, that spouse should be making about $60,000, $80,000. That's what they used to make just about 5 years ago. They can continue doing that now. But without having a report or without having an expert saying that going into that, it could be worthless. I mean, you could, and so you do want to position yourself strategically in those things. You want to be prepared going into those. If you want to even use that argument, we prepare. We know that if we want to use it, we have that report. It's not, we don't leave it up to possibly let's just figure it out, because it's just a waste of time.
It is, and it's valuable. I mean, if we have an expert, and a lot of times, it's definitely worth the cost, because if that expert says your spouse is capable of making $70,000 to $80,000, shoot, even $40,000. I mean,
Right,
that's
yeah.
going to minimize
of
their
course.
need. That's the key. We want to minimize their need. And of course, there are other, the distribution of assets.
Oh, yeah.
And it's really stressful for anybody to think about that, because I think that even though in family law and in the marital world, it's all marital, you're the one who's been working, and you figure that's my retirement, and women say that, and men, and they do, and I do think as much as men hate to pay alimony, women hate it more.
Probably.
And I can relate to that. I would think that I just have seen it so many times, and not myself personally, but I could be like, are you kidding me? I am the one who had the kids, and then I feel like I'm being punished extra. That's part of the emotion we just try to get past. Understand it. We get it. We understand it. But then we just have to look at the reality of, do you want this life? Afterward, how can we, get you there and minimize that expense? And sometimes collaborative law might be the way to go on that. We've talked about that before.
Absolutely, yeah. On the
that's a whole nother video, and you'll see that on our channel. But there are a lot of options. When you approach divorce in the right way and understand it's needs to be strategically done, and it's just a lot like a business negotiation and strategy. And this is like the business of you. And how are we going to negotiate this sale and separate you from your partner in a way that is the least expensive and traumatic over time.
Right. And plan ahead. I mean, sometimes you don't need to file immediately, but plan ahead, because if you have those questions, you have those concerns, come see someone, talk to an attorney to kind of find out where is the law on some of these things, what is kind of happening right now on these types of alimony and things like that. Because don't wait until I have clients all the time come to me that have been married for 17 years exactly, and then they're like, oh, 2 years ago I wanted to come see you, and I'm like, oh, I wish you did, because now that you're in that time frame where potentially you could be at risk for a permanent alimony award where you are paying that. So it's one of those things, if you're thinking about it or anything like that, come talk to someone. I mean, that's the most important thing, is to be educated.
Right now with the tax law. So we are sitting here in the middle of 2018. At the end of this year, divorces after this year, you're not going to get that deduction.
Nope.
So
And that's
if you
huge
think
for the breadwinner.
It really is. So if, as the breadwinner, if you think that I may have exposure to alimony, at least come talk to us or somebody, understand where you are, because it's not, divorce is not something that is done overnight or done as a like, oh, I'm gonna wake up today and do that.
Right.
You have to be ready emotionally, but I do think that answering those questions as far as where your risks are and if it's the right time, what are my advantages to now versus later, as the breadwinner, there are usually a lot. There's a lot more that we would look in, just in a different way than if you're not. I think we look at different things, different times of the year, and now with tax implications.
That's a big one. That's a big one.
It really is. If there's promotions coming, if there's bonuses, at least let's talk about it so that you can make the right decision, the best decision you can based on all the information, I think.
Yeah, if you have all the facts, exactly. That's the most important. That's the only way you can make the educated decision then.
That's right. So we appreciate you watching. Again, this is Florida Women's Law Group, and we represent women going through divorce, family law issues, and estate planning. If you are the breadwinner and you're concerned about your exposure or what would divorce look like for you, please give us a call, and we're happy to talk with you, schedule an appointment, and really see what we can start to do for you, even if it's just beginning a strategy. And certainly subscribe, follow the channel, then you'll know what's coming up next on our shows. Thank you so much.